Welcome to the Socks Make People Sexy Let's Play Apple Tarot, and we are done! So this week, Xelaz decided to not draw a card this time, probably because he already picked all of them out. Instead, what he's decided to do is draw inspiration from what the Apple Tarot is based on. It's based on the tarot, or a tarot deck, and you have the major arcana, of course, but you also have the minor arcana. And this week is all about the minor arcana. Specifically, 4 themes have been laid out to us in order to give it a little more fresh take on this final week. So, from sword, cup, coin, and wand, we have to choose from one of those themes. And we're, for this week, picking coin. And the reason why we're picking coin is because Soul Blazer is a game about wealth and possession. Specifically, the negative to that, which eventually men who succumb to greed because of how much wealth that they have. See, Soul Blazer is a story about a man who has power, so much wealth, but he desires more. And he wonders how he can get more wealth. So he captures a scientist named Dr. Leo in order to build him a machine that will summon the devil to get him more money. Because that's exactly what I would think of to get more money. So, the devil, in this case Death Toll, makes a deal with the king. The king will bring to him every living being in this land, in exchange for 1 gold piece for each one. And it really makes me comfortable about the wealth of humanity. But instead of just leaving King Magritte here to having one gold piece per person, Death Toll decides just to take everybody. And the world is completely empty, including the king, who made this. The moral of the story here is don't make a deal with the devil and succumb to your own greed. But what this game also does is God, or the Master, decides to say, I do forgive this king, but I need you to go down and fix everything for me. So instead of Actraiser, we're going to have Soul Blazer. And that's exactly the story of Soul Blazer at this point. Soul Blazer is a game developed by Quintet. It's specifically the second game developed by them, the first being Actraiser. You're going to notice some of the... If you've ever played Actraiser, you notice some of the terms already used. Specifically the Master. Now, the relation between Soul Blazer and Actraiser is pretty small. You have this reference to the Master, which is probably just the localization team saying, let's kind of relate this to the last game that we had. We called the god the Master in that one. And it was Tanzara as the god for the other one, but in this one we're calling him Death Toll. They're actually supposed to be named Light Gaia and Dark Gaia in reference to Illusion of Gaia, because Soul Blazer is the first game in in this whole series, the Gaia trilogy, or which consists of Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, and Terranigma. Grand Stream Saga as well, but that's another game for another time. Quintet remains to be one of my favorite developers of all time. And it really just allows me to have an excuse to talk about Quintet. Quintet made 6 SNES RPGs. This one, of course, Actraiser, Actraiser 2, and also Robotrek is another one as well too. But that is a different game from this entire series here. But the 5, Actraiser, Soul Blazer, sort of relate to each other in this whole idea of God, this battle between God and Satan, or Light Gaia and Dark Gaia. Now, that's why I really like this series. It's a really interesting twist in this, in that God is not inherently evil in this one. And in a lot of JRPGs, you have a lot of that, where God is kind of this evil deity. It's a nice change of pace, in my opinion. Now, Soul Blazer is as you notice here too, Soul Blazer is a top-down action RPG, where basically we'll be going into dungeons and fighting monsters and releasing seals. A lot like Actraiser's simulation mode, where you have to release monster seals in order to continue on with developing the talents. But this one, basically, enemies will be coming out of these monster seals, and we have to defeat each one as they come out. As we defeat all of them, the seal will unlock and allow us to progress through the dungeon, or release a life form that's been sealed by Death Toll. Now, with this game too, if you've ever played the PS2 game Dark Cloud, it's actually a lot like that. Instead of building the town like you can in Dark Cloud, the town just builds by itself. So there's no town building mechanic in this game at all. It's just a pretty simple action RPG where you need to basically release enough seals in order to progress through the game. There are seals that you have to clear in order to beat the game, and throughout, and some you don't have to. Although it's good to release all the seals to get more items and more equipment and weapons to get the ultimate stuff, of course. But you don't necessarily need to do all of it to beat the game. But my first playthrough, I did, and it's really easy to do. Now, Soul Blazer is not that complicated of a game. If you ever played like a Zelda, kind of Zelda top-down style game, you've played a lot of the mechanics of Soul Blazer. But there is one major mechanic of Soul Blazer I think that other games don't get right, and it's exactly what I'm doing here. You notice you can walk around, of course, in Soul Blazer, but you can also force yourself to face in one direction. This is the primary mechanic in battling in Soul Blazer, and makes dealing with enemies in the game itself a lot more manageable. The game is almost built around this mechanic of keeping yourself forward, because whenever you have a sword equipped, your sword will actually face in that direction as well too, and any enemy that comes towards you is damaged by that still, even without you swinging your sword. And you can still swing your sword as well too while you're facing in that direction. And of course, enemies around you as well, like in your proximity of your sword swing, will do the same thing. Now, I will say, excuse the slowdown here too. This game is not going to kind with that recording here. And also, one thing too, just with the game as well, I will admit this translation is not the best. We've had 2 different spellings for all right so far. So anyway, with Soul Blazer 2, you'll notice that there's that orb that's floating around me, and you notice probably in the beginning as well too, I released that Magician from the first seal in the game. The Magician is a constant companion, and you also have other souls that you collect in that sphere as well. Different spirits have different spells and different abilities, like the Sphere of Light that cause like a light to go around that sphere from its light of dark areas. But the Magician allows you to use magic, which I'm not using much of right now, but trust me, magic in this game is really important to get a handle on. It's also going to make your dealing with some of the other enemies a lot more manageable. For example, but aiming with magic, I will admit, is kind of tricky at first. You notice that sphere is going around you. The Fireball spell, which is the first one you get, fires a shot in the direction that you're facing. But it does not fire it from the main character, it fires it from that sphere. So a lot of times the goal of this game is to kind of get enemies in the proximity of that, like that, and then to kind of wait to use the spell. Now there are other spells besides the Fireball. There's a Tornado spell that causes a tornado to happen. There's a whole bunch of different spells, including the Firebird, which is the spell you need to defeat the final boss. Now, with this as well too, you also have items you collect, medical herbs, different potions, things like that too. It's a pretty standard action RPG from the looks of it. And to be honest, this is the most simple of the Illusion of Gaia trilogy. Now, again, we've noticed so far the enemies have not been too hectic right now. This first dungeon, the Underground Castle, only consists of 3 main parts. This first one here, which will lead up to an elevator, which we have to release the seal right by the elevator in order to get it working and go back into town. But the other part, the next part too, has more enemies that actually fire shots at you. And then the third part of the area is the painting, which is sort of the final area that leads up to the first boss of the game. And that's basically the first town. So each town is separated into different areas that you need to explore and hit different spots. Like for the second town, actually, it's actually 1 main area and 3 temples that are in that area that you need to go through. Now, and then you have other areas too, like the ocean, which causes you to go between different islands and different areas, and actually unlock different things. Like one island will unlock something else. That's a lot of what's, again, too, with Soul Blazer. Pretty simple dungeons, but they're all areas that they're pretty cool, actually, as you keep going into them. And they grow more interesting as the game goes on. There's also again, so there's actually Dr. Leo's laboratory, which is a really fun dungeon, and that you're exploring this house in the underground part, but then you actually shrink down into these little miniature model towns and start fighting monsters in there and unlocking seals in that too, and unlocking different pieces of this house. And that's a cool thing in this game too. This game humanizes machines as well as characters. The elevator that we'll reach later actually talks to you and says that I'm a machine invented by Dr. Leo. Kind of this idea that everything that we do, everything that we have is worth something. Every thought, idea, action that we have, and the main thing too is this parallel between both King Magritte and Dr. Leo. Throughout the game, we meet the different pets that Dr. Leo has had, like Turbo the dog, Lou the dolphin, Marie the doll. There's also a snail as well too, and just kind of the worth of life versus how much life is worth. I'd say that really fits with the coin theme. Not just with the bad part of it, but also how much life is worth and just what we create. And that's a lot of the reason why I think Soul Blazer is a really special game, especially to me, because the different things I've worked with too. It may seem silly to say that machines have like a life or so, but that's what this game kind of does, and it takes itself seriously with it, and I think it works overall. Now, to be honest, it's an amazing game, but it's the weakest actually of the trilogy. Which my personal favorite being Illusion of Gaia, and Terra Nigma being my second favorite. Soul Blazer is probably my least favorite of them, but that's really not saying much. Soul Blazer is an absolutely fantastic game from beginning to end. It's really short too. You can probably sit down with it, beat it in about 3 days, kind of just off and on playing. Again, just overall, it's a fun, quick, fast-paced action game. But as we've been going through this dungeon here, we now have we've now unlocked the water mill. So the water mill is what we need to do to go on into this dungeon. And this is the first part of the game where we are now stuck here, we cannot go forward. We now have to get back to town in order to crank the water wheel. Now, fortunately, as we've been defeating enemies, we've unlocked a quick way back through this dungeon. So this little place right here is the best way to get out of this dungeon. So that's what this game does too. It's really convenient as well too, like how much this game kind of gives you, and just what you need to, just like it gives you the right path you need to go. It's pretty linear, but that's not really a fault in these days too, especially when we want games to be really quick, but still really meaningful. And that's what Soul Blazer is. It's quick and meaningful. Now I'm gonna show you a little bit of town here too. As we start to build the city here with different things, we're going more forward into this. We have more towns here. We can talk to the different townspeople. We have this nice little river, nice little cloud effect. That guy walking back and forth towards the bridge is kind of impressive to me for some reason. I just think it's really cool. But we have to actually just turn this water wheel, and that'll unlock the next part of the dungeon. Now, I'm actually going to skip all of that here, too. And I'm going to skip to one more part of this game, the show, right after this. And we're going to talk to this guy. He was trying to get the wrong way. Now, I'm going to actually use the magic of TV cooking to skip to the first boss of Soul Blazer. This is Metal Mantis, or Solid Arm, as he's actually called in Illusion of Gaia. He's a bonus boss in Illusion of Gaia. And this is the part where people might get frustrated with Soul Blazer. Some of the bosses can be kind of tricky. To be honest, though, I never had too much of a problem with them. And the reason why, actually, is because of the sword technique here, where you hold your sword out in front of you and keep walking in basically the direction here. As you're actually moving him too, you don't have to swing anything. It damages the boss at a pretty regular pace. Now, you want to be about level 4 with this boss battle, like I am right now. And also equip that medical herb just in case. If you die without equipping the medical herb, you'll actually die. So the medical herb will restore you to health once you've hit 0. Now, basically, you want to keep going back and forth. Two of those arrows are moving you towards the boss. One's moving you away. The best way to do damage is kind of work your way work your way towards Mothers as he's moving there, then dodge out of the way when he's hitting that, when he's doing that fireball technique. He's harder in Illusion of Gaia, because he fights the exact same way, but you don't have this technique. But overall, that's Metal Mantis. Good first boss. This game does have some tougher bosses, but overall, just an overall wonderful game. I highly recommend Soul Blazer. And with that, that's going to conclude the Socks Make People Sexy Let's Play Apple Tarot. Thank you all for watching.